Right. Hi, guys. So I wanted to go through a few practice problems together in this second video for today. Now, the reason I wanted to go through these practice problems together is I wanted to show you a different strategy that you can use in order to convert from one unit of measurement to another. Now, this strategy, if it helps you, you can feel more than welcome to use it. If it is a little bit confusing to you and you feel that you have an easier time just dividing or multiplying when you are moving from larger units to smaller units or smaller units to larger units, that is also absolutely fine. So remember, we learn strategies in order to have more tools in our tool belt. It doesn't mean you have to use them all at once, and if one makes sense to you, awesome, go ahead and use it. If one is a little confusing, then don't use that one, use a different one, okay? All right, so what I want to go over is I want to try a practice problem together and show you this new strategy that you can use. So this question is saying, how many milliliters are there in 425 liters? So we'll keep that in our minds, and I want to show you something. So this chart right here, boys and girls, this chart is here to help you to remember how to convert in different metric units. Now, again, if this is a little tough for you, or at the end of this video you say, I would prefer to do it the other way, that is also totally fine, okay? But I wanted to show you. So in this um, chart, what you have is you have a saying at the top that is going to help you remember all of the different prefixes. So you have king. K in king stands for kilo. Now kilo, we know that prefix is 1,000. Then you have Henry, which that H stands for hecto, which is 100. Then you have D in dozen, which is deca, which stands for 10. And then in the middle here, these are our base units. Usually the U stands for unit. So base units, boys and girls, those are our units that everything else will end with. So when you have, for example, like a centimeter, meter is your base unit for a centimeter. So meter, liter, and gram are the three base units that we've learned about all this week. So remember, we have our meter, which we use to measure the length of something. We have our liter, which we use to measure the capacity. And then we have our gram, which we use to measure the mass of something. Now, those, think of them like the ones place. This is technically like the ones place, and then you have the tens place, hundredths, and thousands place. So, this ones place, it's going to be 1 meter, 1 liter, and 1 gram. Now, when you think of a number, boys and girls, you may not realize it, but every number, whole number, at the end of it, there is a decimal, and then after it is where the following pieces go. So if you have, for example, a fraction of a whole number, not an entire whole number, that's going to go after the decimal. So what I'm actually going to do is I am going to insert a little circle to act like our decimal point. So after our, whoop, and playing with me. Let's see. Okay, so after our one base unit, you have your deci, which is D in drink, stands for deci. So deci means 1/10. So this is how you would write that in decimal form, and this is how you would write this in fraction form. They're both they're both spoken the same way, 1/10. And then you have centi, which is 1/100th. Chocolate, the C in chocolate stands for centi. And then you have the M in milk, which is milli, and that is 1/1000th. This is the decimal, and this is how you would read that in fraction form. So these words at the very top are there to help you try to remember. So think of King Henry doesn't usually drink chocolate milk. That is just a tool in your mind in order to try to remember just like when we were learning about long division and we had our tool about burgers, we learned about how to do the different steps for long division. So this is the same exact thing. So we'll think of kilo, hecto, deca, our units, which are meters, liters, and grams, and then deci, centi, and milli. So let me show you how this all works. So just remember that this right here, this point, or I guess you call it our decimal point, that is acting as our decimal point. So don't forget that, okay? So let's try our question again. Our question says, how many milliliters are there in 425 liters? So if I were to write 425, if this was my ones place, I would write, let's see if it wants to work for me. There we go. I would write my 5 here because it's 425. So this is my hundredths place, this is my tens, and this is my ones. So I have my 5. Just give me one moment. All right, so my 425, and then I have my decimal point after it. Now, I know that these are 425 liters. So up here, you'll see liters. So this is 425 liters, and the decimal point is after it. So the decimal point, boys and girls, has to go after whatever you are converting to. So we are in liters right now, so the decimal point is at the end of the liter unit or the column. So let's see, we are going to convert it to milliliters. Okay, so now let me go back here. So my milliliters are back here by my milk. So that is 1/1000. So what I have to do is I have to take my decimal and I have to move it to the end of whatever I am trying to make the number. So it was liters, so I had my decimal point at the end of that column. Now I want my decimal point to be at the end of my milliliters column because that is what I am converting it to. But now here's the problem. I'm leaving the numbers there because they're in the correct spot. But I have these 3 columns that are sitting by themselves and they're empty. What do I add to these columns? What I would add, boys and girls, is I would add my zeros. So in these 3 columns, I am going to add a 0 in each. Now again, I moved the decimal point to the end of the milliliters column because that is what I'm trying to convert 425 liters to. I want to make liters milliliters. So this is what it would look like. If I converted 425 liters to milliliters, I am going to make it 425,000 milliliters. So it's the same as me doing 425 times 1,000. So it would be the same as me doing my multiplication or division that you would normally do. This is just a little bit more of a visual help. So let me go up here and let me see. I have 425,000 milliliters. That is the answer that I would pick. So that is C. Now let's try another one. So this question says, how many liters are there in 14,500 milliliters? Okay, so right now it says that we are currently working with 14,500 milliliters. So let me write that in my column. So I have 14. Just give me one moment. Okay. Oops, sorry. 14,500 milliliters. I apologize, boys and girls. My computer is not doing exactly what I want it to. Okay, there we go. All right. Okay, so I have 14,500 milliliters. Now, my decimal point is at the end of the milliliters column because I am currently working with milliliters. Now, let's see what they want me to change this to. They want me to convert 14,500 milliliters into liters. So here's what I'm going to do. I have to start with my decimal point and I have to move it from milliliters to liters. So I'm going to move my decimal point over here right to the end of this column, which is the liter column. Now, these zeros that are at the end here, they're not there anymore because I don't need them right now. They're after the decimal point. So I could have a million zeros. They're not something that's going to help me or change the number at all. So what I have here, now that I moved this decimal point to the end of liters rather than milliliters, what I have is I actually have 14 and um, a 14 and a half 14 and a half liters. So I have converted 14,500 milliliters to liters, and basically what I see here is I have 14 and then I have my decimal point and then I have 5/10. So remember this, the deci is 1/10. So I have 5 here, so this is 5/10. And remember 5 over 10, that can be read actually as 1/2 because 5 is half of 10. So this would be 14 and a half liters. So if I go back here, I actually have an answer that says that 14 and a half liters. So my answer to that would be A. Now let's try another problem together. So this problem says how many liters are there in 750 milliliters? So right now I'm starting with 750 milliliters. So let me show you that. So I know that I am working with milliliters, so let me put my decimal at the bottom of milliliters, the end, and let me write my number. So I have all right, there we go. So I have 750 milliliters. So I'm starting, my decimal point is right here at the end of milliliters because that is what I am working with right now. And now what they want me to convert it to is they're saying how many liters are there. So they want me to make milliliters into liters. So if I'm going to make milliliters into liters, which is my base unit, I have to move this decimal from milliliters over to the end of the liter column. So let me move my decimal point. And now what has happened here is, again, after the decimal point, zeros don't matter. It's okay if you left it. It's okay if you got rid of it. But I have a decimal point and then I have 7/5. So this is really 7/10 and this is 5/100. So it basically is like if there was an imaginary zero here, it's 0.75. So if I go up here and I were to look at my answers, what answer shows me a decimal point and then 75? I see that D shows me a decimal point and then 75. So my correct answer
75
would,
hundredths liters.
sorry, I clicked on the noise. So the correct answer would be D. Now let's try number 4. Number 4 says how many milliliters are there in 32 liters? All right, so let's try that together. So I am working with 32 liters. So my decimal point is actually at the perfect spot because it's already after liters. So we're just going to write in 32. All right, so this shows me 32 liters because my decimal point is after the liter. Now what I want to convert that to is it says how many milliliters are there. So I want to change liters to milliliters. So let me see how I would do that. So if I want to go from liters to milliliters, I have to take my decimal and I have to move it to the end of milliliters. Now, I'm not moving my numbers. My numbers are staying in the same spot. So what do I do with these three empty columns? What did we do in the beginning? We had to fill them in with zeros. So I'm going to take my text boxes and I'm going to place a 0 in each empty column. So now what I have is I have 32,000 milliliters. So that is how I converted 32 liters to 32,000 milliliters. So the correct answer would be, let me see, 32,000 milliliters. All right, now let's try the last problem together. How many milliliters are there in 3.2 liters? Okay, so I'm starting with liters. So if I am, let me just delete this. If I am beginning with liters, what I have to do is I have to make sure that my decimal point is after the liter column. Now it says 3.2 liters, so the 2 is after the decimal point. So if my decimal point has to be there, what I have to do is I have to do exactly what they showed me, 3.2 liters, okay? So my decimal point is right there in the middle. So now they want me to take 3.2 liters and they want to know how many milliliters there are in those liters. So I'm trying to convert from a larger unit to a smaller unit. So I am technically going to multiply. This chart is just a more visual way to do it. If you were to simply just multiply and you don't want to use the chart, absolutely okay. But let's try it. So I want to move this to the end of milliliters because that is what I'm converting to. So milliliters and my decimal is at the end. Now these empty columns, I have to do the same thing that I did before. I have to add my zeros. So if I were to convert 3.2 or 3 2/10 liters to milliliters, what I would get is I would get 3,200 milliliters. So if I go back to my quiz, I would say that there are 3,200 milliliters in 3 2/10 liters. So my correct answer would be A. So we got a 5 out of 5 on this. And boys and girls, I want to just remind us that if you choose to use this, I am going to post this visual and you are more than welcome again to choose to use this to help you. But if you do feel a little bit more comfortable, for example, if I said that you had 32 liters of something and I asked you how many kiloliters that is, and you chose to just rather than go through this process, you chose to just divide or multiply, just like when we were learning about converting. When you are going from a larger unit to a smaller unit, you multiply. When you're going from a smaller unit to a larger unit, you divide. If you want to just do that and this seems a little bit intimidating, that is fine. If you're looking at this and you're saying, wow, that's easy peasy, this is a great tool for me, then that's fine as well. However you feel comfortable, okay? But remember, when you are using this, if you choose to, put your decimal after the box of the unit you're starting with and then move it to the unit you're ending with. So for example, when I start with liters, I'm going to put it after liter. And then when I made it into milliliters, I converted it or changed it, that's when I moved it to the unit that I'm choosing to convert it to. So make sure your decimal starts. So we started with liters, it started after liters, and then when I made it into milliliters, I changed it, I moved it to the end of milliliters, okay? All right, so if you have any questions on this or if anything is a little confusing, please reach out to me and let me know. All right.